Hello everyone, this is Cindy Stover, and we are recording this set of videos to talk more about the ways that refugees are being impacted by the coronavirus pandemic in preparation for World Refugee Day. That is coming up on June 20th, so we want to celebrate that by learning a little bit more about how we can connect with and better to support refugees around the world during this time. Anita, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Anita Bowie. I'm from Sunlight Christian Reformed Church in Regina, and we do a lot of sponsoring of refugee families. We are, since 2014, we have done 4 families.
My name is Dina Nicolai, and I work for the Christian Reformed Churches of British Columbia, and I work directly with refugees who are government assisted and also refugee claimants, helping to support them in their first few months and year of resettling in Canada. I also do work part-time with World Renew's refugee program, working with churches who are sponsoring and supporting refugees who are new to Canada.
Awesome, thank you. So Anita, we chatted a bit more earlier about how sponsored refugees are being affected in the setting that you work in. Then how are the sponsorship groups being affected by the new reality of this pandemic in Canada?
The pandemic disrupted, I guess, the established system for interaction between the sponsored refugee and the sponsorship groups. Prior to this, we were able to meet as often as every week with the sponsored refugees. These meetings were often fairly spontaneous, helping with groceries, shopping, paying bills, and just visiting. And after the lockdown, those in the sponsorship group were required to divert much of their available free time to their own families and away from the needs of the sponsorship refugees. So the sponsored refugees in turn had to also become more self-sufficient and develop alternative ways of continuing their English languages, training and integrating with Canadian society. With the closure of the in-person programs, refugees had to find online programs to continue their English classes, but the restrictions on gatherings meant that they stayed at home instead of meeting other people. Apart from text messaging and emails, their interaction between the sponsoring groups and refugees was essentially cut off during the first part of the lockdown. All interactions required a significant amount of time to plan meetings. So gradually, as people began to develop normal routines, for taking care of their own families, more time again was able to be given to the sponsoring group members to reach out to them and contact and become more involved in their day-to-day lives.
Great, thank you. Dina, can you share a little bit with us about your experience of how the pandemic has affected government-sponsored refugees, those who they don't necessarily have a sponsorship group from a church or a community group around them? How are they being affected?
I think there's been a range of reactions and feelings, I think, as among other people in Canada. But I would still say in general, I've seen and heard a lot of feelings of uncertainty and instability. And I think for some people who arrived here as government-assisted refugees, that's bringing back some of the trauma or some of the memories of these previous times in their lives where they felt completely having a loss of control, where they had no idea what their future was going to look like, just after fleeing from their home country and while waiting in a third country, trying to understand if they were going to ever get resettled elsewhere or what they should do, and having just no complete picture of what their life was going to look like in the future. People are feeling a little bit more like that now, especially because when they arrive in Canada, many of them will talk about starting to feel like they can finally start imagining a future and start building a future. And some of that feels like it's been put on pause right now. And some of that comes with things like not always having proper access to technology or devices. So as we kind of move and continue in this sort of virtual reality, if your English class or your peer support programs have moved onto Zoom or Skype or Google Meet or Google Classrooms, and you don't have a device that can handle those programs, or you don't have a Wi-Fi access, then it makes it very challenging to continue to stay connected. So that sense of isolation is there as well, as again, it is for other people. But when you're new, I think that can feel a little bit exacerbated even more. Some people are starting to feel a little bit more stable, starting to imagine, okay, we're going to get through this. But I still have that sense. I mean, families trying to figure out how do I help my kid with homeschooling when I don't really speak English and I didn't go through the Canadian education system. And I already had my child's education disrupted while we were waiting for resettlement or during our refugee journey. And I don't want my child to miss out on any education. So some anxiety there. So it does look different from person to person, but I'd still say those are some of the general things.
Yeah, that's great. And I guess it's interesting too, because we're all in different provinces. Anita, you're in Saskatchewan, Dina, you're in BC, and I'm in Ontario. And I feel like Ontario still has quite a bit more harsher restrictions than some of the other provinces that are opening up a bit more. I know, right now I'm supporting a refugee family, but it's like a question like, can I have them in my car to take them to see appointments? Do we all need to wear masks? Is it safe to go see apartment viewings right now? Or do we wait until, it's a weird question depending on how open the different provinces are and what phases they're at. But I appreciate how creative sponsorship groups are being with ways to connect virtually, to connect via texting, to do, I've heard about people who are doing social distance visits in a front yard or things like that. So that creativity is really key and really important right now.